Next up is today's guest speaker, Buzzy Jackson, joining us from Boulder, Colorado. Buzzy is an author, a world traveler, and a doctor of history from Berkeley. She contacted us last fall to let us know that her newest book, The Inspirational Atheist, was about to go to press. And she's here today to share with you some wise words from her book. So, welcome, Buzzy Jackson.
Super psyched to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I have a friend here from second grade, and I have a friend here from college, and a bunch of new friends too. Thank you so much. I do want to say that there's going to be a bad word in this slideshow, so just prepare yourselves. But I did do this, I did sort of do a talk like this, including the bad word, for a talk where my 9-year-old son was in the audience, so I think it'll be okay. I think we'll survive. So I spent the past couple years researching what humankind's greatest thinkers have had to say about our role in the universe, just like Rosa was talking about. Our small human lives in this giant universe we live in. And I did find that there were some common themes. Let's see. So I'm not sure you can see that very well, but it's a picture of the Milky Way over Devil's Tower in Wyoming. And the quote is, "A man is a very small thing, and the night is large and full of wonders." I love that quote, not just because it sounds like it's something from Game of Thrones, but because it really is how a lot of us feel when we look up at the sky. Not in LA, because you mostly just see, strobe lights. But when you're camping and you see the stars, and you have that feeling, and sometimes, depending on your mood, you feel like, oh, I'm tiny, what does it all mean? And then sometimes if you're in a good mood, or you've had some coffee or tequila or something, you feel like, yeah, man, I'm totally part of this, it's awesome. And that is how you should feel. Now, Galileo, in the 1600s, wrote, "Philosophy is written in this grand book, I mean the universe, which stands continuously open to our gaze." And what I like about that is that Galileo, I think, understood more than a lot of people, certainly in the 1600s, that if we really wanted to understand the world around us, it was better not to look in the books that people had written, some of the holy books, for example. It was better to look at that book. That's where we were going to find the answers that we were looking for. I mean, they didn't make it easy for him, obviously. Eric Hoffer, the 20th century philosopher, said, "Humanness came of age when man asked the first question." And what I like about that is that I think it really gets to the heart of the thing, that curiosity, our human ability and our desire to learn more about ourselves and our place in the world is kind of what makes us unique. So you might not have a great view of this, but you've probably seen it before. These are human handprints. These are the oldest ones that we've found so far. They think they're about 40,000 years old. This is from Spain. And there's something so poignant, I always feel, looking at these cave paintings, because these are people who were biologically identical to all of us in this room. There's really nothing different about them except their culture. And I think what these represent, in one way, is the first sign of an organism on Earth trying to interpret the world around itself, trying to understand itself, not merely survive in this world, but to understand it. And here's another cave painting. This one is from Lascaux in France, about 16,000 years ago. What I like about this painting is that it shows something we've seen in a lot of cave paintings, which is, that's kind of like a bull type of animal. This is the game they hunted. There's a figure of a man next to it, and there's a little bird underneath. And for a long time, archaeologists thought, okay, these are people drawing the things that help them survive, the food. Only recently have archaeologists found out that there's actually constellations embedded in all of these paintings. And so you're not going to be able exactly to see it, but the eye of the bull, the eye of the man, and the eye of the bird in the bigger picture form what's known as the summer triangle. These stars, Deneb, Vega, and Altair. And 16,000 years ago, it was oriented in that way over Europe. And that's true of a lot of constellations all throughout those caves. And I think that what we see there is that humans were drawing pictures of themselves, but to differentiate themselves, sure, to understand themselves, but also they depicted themselves within the context of not only the animals they ate, the weapons they used, but within the whole context, everything. It was all a part of their world. And that idea of sort of the perspective that they had about where they fit in, you know, their culture was pretty different from ours, but I think they were really onto something there. And it was something that kind of got lost a little bit, I think, as we got better and better tools. Because for a long time, people knew this. Not I, but the world says it. All is one. That's from several thousand years ago. Henri Matisse said, "When we speak about nature, we must not forget that we are a part of it. A tree, the sky, or a thought, we too are linked to the entire universe." And that's a thought that may have seemed obvious to artists like Matisse, and it seemed obvious to the pre-modern humans, but not so much to a lot of us. Click it. So we wanted to get this sense of ourselves, where we fit in, and a perspective on our lives. As we sort of gained mastery of agriculture and these type of things, we started to see ourselves as distinct from our surroundings. You've seen art like this. This is ancient Egyptian art, the Bayeux tapestry from 1070. And the one thing that really distinguishes this kind of art, and sort of intuitively we know it's a little different from our art, is that there's no perspective. There's no depth of field in these paintings. Perspective, that kind of artistic perspective, was something we actually had to invent. And what I think is so fascinating about perspective is it seems really obvious to us now how you draw a cube on a flat sheet of paper, but the idea that you could actually represent 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional plane was more than just a technical achievement. It was really a leap of consciousness. It makes me think, you know, we know how to do that. Maybe 100, 1,000 years from now, our descendants will look back at us and say, why couldn't they depict the 4th dimension? That's crazy. What's wrong with them? What I like about this painting that's from the 13th century is that this is a really early attempt at perspective. And it does have a depth of field, but as you can see, it's not quite there yet. The gentleman on the far right is almost as tall as the building he's standing next to. The guys on the roof are about 1/3 of the size of the guy on the top. It's not quite there. There's something very poignant about that to me. And these early drawings, these are from Galileo's sketches from his notebook in 1600. You know, Galileo not only observed the moon and the planets, he built the telescopes to do that. And one of the reasons that he got in trouble was it wasn't just the idea that it turns out everything doesn't revolve around the Earth. It was these drawings which just were representations of what he saw through the telescope of the moon that everyone can see. But what he saw is that the moon is not perfectly smooth. It's not perfect. And by definition, in his time, everything up there was a heavenly body and therefore perfect. There wasn't supposed to be any flaws. There certainly weren't supposed to be any craters. And this is one of the things that got him locked up in a tower for a while. We figured out perspective pretty clearly, definitely by the 20th century. And those same kind of tools, just like Galileo was both an artist and a scientist, our sense of ourselves goes along hand in hand with the technology that we possess. So by the 20th century, we had mastered perspective, for sure, But it actually sometimes fooled us into believing that we really were distinct from everything around us. That we were really special, unique, masters of the universe. The dark side of that is that there's a kind of loneliness to that too. This is a magazine cover from 1952, height of the Cold War. What I love about this is, I love everything about this, first of all. First of all, I love that soon is underlined. Man will conquer space soon. And it's such, the attitude is so triumphalist. It's obviously an attitude of conquest. It's the kind of thing that leads to colonialism. But honestly, it's a great motivational strategy. I mean, this makes you feel like, we can totally do this, you guys. And yet, other people were starting around the same time, like Alan Watts in the 1950s, Zen philosopher. They were starting to question that attitude. It was kind of a tough sell during the Cold War, as you can imagine. You and I are all as much continuous with the physical universe as a wave is continuous with the ocean. But man will conquer space soon. Just love that. I hope that Alan Watts read this magazine. Let's see here. This is a photograph, a selfie, if you will, from, yeah, right, let me click it on mine too. From 1966, Buzz Aldrin, no relation, sadly. That's him with Earth behind him. And as the space program developed, as we were trying to conquer space, once those guys got up there, and these guys, as anyone who has seen The Right Stuff 75 times, like I have, knows, those guys were like fighter pilots, they were kind of jocks. They got up into space and everything changed. They saw themselves as part of something bigger. And there's even a name for this. It's called the overview effect. It's what happens when you float out in space and look down at the Earth. That's the, okay, there's two bad words. I asked Ian if I could put this slide in. Yeah, I really, really love this slide because I feel that it is the only appropriate headline for what happened. We walked on the fucking moon, people. It's crazy. Where I live in Boulder, there is, in Boulder, Colorado, there's a museum. There's a lot of astronauts who came from Boulder. And there's a museum there, and they have a moon rock in there. And I'm sure somewhere in LA, there's some moon rocks too. And I just urge you to go and look at the moon rocks, because I go to my moon rock. I feel like it's mine because no one's ever there looking at it for some reason. Just look at it and really try to comprehend what you are seeing. You are seeing a piece of that thing that Galileo looked at in 1600. It is sitting there inside a little vitrine for you to comprehend. I cannot comprehend it, but I feel that this headline helps me get there. As Jim Lovell, the astronaut, said, from now on, we live in a world where man has walked on the moon, and it's not a miracle, we just decided to go. To me, why this is such an important sentiment, because it goes back to that quote from Eric Hoffer about curiosity, that very human trait of wanting to learn more. It's not easy to ask questions. Look what happened to Galileo. And yet, people kept doing it because it was worth it. The only reason we got to the fucking moon is because, it's not because we prayed that we would get there, it's not because we hoped we would get there, it is not because we were good that we got there. We got there because we made a decision to go, and we did all the things necessary to do it. And I don't really think that gets emphasized enough. Come on, baby. Okay. So there's the handprint, 40,000 years old. There's Neil Armstrong's footprint on the moon. To me, these are two of the most profound legacies of what it means to be human that we have. It took us 40,000 years to get from that handprint to the footprint. But like I said, the handprint was made by people who were biologically identical to Neil Armstrong. It just took some time to get there. And to me, that's an amazing legacy. The handprint has lasted for 40,000 years. The footprint could last 1 billion, depending on what happens to the moon. There's no wind up there, nothing to blow it away. As Edgar Mitchell, who was the 6th man on the moon, which is why you have never heard of him, said, there was a startling recognition that the nature of the universe was not as I had been taught. I not only saw the connectedness, I felt it. I was overwhelmed with a sensation of physically and mentally extending out into the cosmos. They took pictures, of course, when they got up there, and a lot of people felt like those pictures made the Earth look very lonely, which kind of does. This is another photo of the Earth taken almost exactly 1 year ago from the Mars Curiosity rover. It's hard to see from where you are. It's hard even for me to see, but that's an enlarged image of Earth from the horizon of Mars. That quest for perspective that we've been trying for a long time, look at the perspective that we have now. It's amazing. What I like about this photo is that everyone in this room is in that photo. Unless there's like, I think Amy's twin babies are not in there, but yeah. My house looks really clean from this perspective. Really clean from this perspective. I mean, it gives you a sense of, honestly, what we call the big picture, right? As Sir Thomas Browne, a scientist in the 19th century, said, "We carry with us the wonders we seek without us." And I think, in a way, what he was going for there is that kind of what Rosa was just talking about. All that stuff, that's in us too. As Thomas Carlyle said, "It is a mathematical fact that the casting of this pebble from my hand alters the center of gravity in the universe." That's how connected we are. And as D.H. Lawrence said, "For man, the vast marvel is to be most vividly, most perfectly alive. We ought to dance with rapture that we should be alive and in the flesh and part of the living, incarnate cosmos." So there's the night sky. You can probably see it a little better from here. And when you look up there, next time you see it, ask yourself, really, how does it make you feel to see it? As Rosa said, check out the synchronicity, people. When I look up in the universe, I know I'm small, but I'm also big because I'm connected to the universe, and the universe is connected to me. Or as Niels Bohr once said, a physicist is just an atom's way of looking at itself. He was smart. There's the sky again. That's us, obviously. We look good, we look good. And as Carl Sagan said, "Some part of our being knows the cosmos is where we came from. We long to return, and we can, because the cosmos is also within us. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." And just so it's not too heavy, just remember, we're just talking monkeys on an organic spaceship flying through the universe. Right now, that's what we're actually doing right now. It's awesome. Thank you guys so much.